My name is Jeff Fresby, and my family and I own and operate Addison Farms Vineyard in Lester, North Carolina. This video is the story of our newest barn, started in July 2019 and nearly finished as of March 2020. My dad, Eddie, and I did most of the work, with one of the Addison Farm staff providing an extra hand as needed. The only part of the new barn in which we did not have a hand was pouring the concrete floor. Really, the story of this building began several years earlier when we cut and milled the lumber for this building, well before we had an idea that we would build this new barn. The first bit of timber came from 3 really large trees, 1 gigantic pine and 2 really large poplars from the Frisbee farm. That property is located about a mile away from the vineyard. In early winter of 2017, we had some pretty big winds that caused damage to all 3 of those trees. We cut those trees and had them milled here on the farm. The pine tree was an extremely large tree, well over 140 feet tall, before the wind broke the top 30 feet out of it. Once that damage happened, we had 2 choices: cut the tree and use the timber, or let it rot and fall, so we decided to get what we could out of it. It was actually quite a bit of lumber. The first 2 logs we cut from that tree were each 16 feet. The next 2 were 14 feet, 1 12-foot, 2 10-foot, and 1 8-foot log. The most basal log made a blank 20 inches square. It gave us 50 2x4s. Both poplars were milled into all 1-inch material, ranging from 12 inches wide to about 4 inches, and all in 10 to 14-foot length. Once all of that material was milled, it was stacked on trailers and stored in barns to dry. The pine 2x4s had a little over 2 years of drying time before we used them for the 4 and 12, 28-foot wide roof trusses, and the poplar had nearly 3 years of drying time before being used as siding on the new building. In 2019, we applied for and won a WNC Ag Options grant to help us with the construction of the new barn. In early spring, we pulled some vines from the vineyard to make room for the new building, and then as time permitted, Eddie did the grading a bit at a time. We set the posts for the barn on July 1st, 2019, then did the framing work to get the building ready for trusses. We spent days on and off building the trusses, mainly rainy days when we could not work outside. We set up a generator and built them in what Eddie calls the big barn down on the Frisbee farm, and there is no doubt it is a big building. It was built as a tobacco barn in the early 70s. It is 80 feet long and 32 feet wide. No power, no water, no finished floor, but it gave us a great covered space in which to work and store the trusses. On September 19th, 2019, we set the roof trusses. Normally we would not plan that kind of work during harvest, but 2019 was such a phenomenal growing season. We had the luxury of letting fruit hang on the vine longer than we can in most years. We had a great crew that day. Eddie and I, several neighbors helped, plus a couple of the guys on the vineyard crew. In one day, we set all 26 trusses with their help, plus that of a 6,000-pound shooting boom forklift. It was a crazy expensive rental, but it kept us so much safer than carrying the trusses up on a ladder. After that, the building sat quiet for about 4 weeks until harvest was complete. Then we really stood on the gas to get the roof on it. We installed the purlins and started placing the galvalume roof panels. Each panel is 3 feet wide and 16 feet long, so frequently we could only work in the mornings because by lunchtime the wind would be too much. Even a gentle breeze made it dangerous to work. Those big panels become big sails in the wind. By the end of October, we had all but 2 of the roof panels on. The floor was poured on November 4th, and we finished with the roofing shortly after. At that point, we started the siding using the 1-inch poplar we milled in late 2017. We also used some tin roofing material from a shed we had to tear down from the Frisbee farm. That shed had stood for nearly 80 years, but flooding in 2016 damaged the building beyond repair. Eddie and I demolished the building gently, salvaging as much of the old barn wood and tin as we could. There wasn't enough of that tin to make it all the way around the building, but we had some other roofing that Eddie had salvaged over 40 years ago when he built the building that is now the winery. Between the 2 sources, we had enough to complete the siding. So here we are in April 2020. The building is almost complete. We still need to add the battens to the board and batten siding, but otherwise, this building is ready for work, and it is already working. We rebuilt a trailer in here recently, and we even did some mechanical work on the oldest tractor on the farm. The tractor hadn't been running for a couple of years, so Eddie took the time to get her back in shape. A rebuilt carburetor later, and the 1957 Ford 601 Workmaster is once again ready for action.